Hey guys, what's happening? So I've been climbing in Masters with my Bandle Tree deck, and this is, I think, overall going to be a very competitive deck, actually. We're seeing a lot of Masters representations of Bandle Tree. I'm currently at 109 LP in Masters, which is rank 29 on the NA leaderboard, and I'm going to be playing some games in this video, so you guys will see if I rank up or down. But basically, this is the new deck that I'm personally going to be climbing with, and it has a lot of similarities with the Lulu Poppy deck, of course, using a lot of the Bandle tools that are just kind of insanely powerful. So I haven't finished the full meta tier list report yet. Hopefully that should be able to come out tomorrow, but for a little sneak peek, I mean, pretty much everything is updated. I just need to finalize a couple of things before the video tomorrow, maybe. But you can see like Bandle Tree Swarm is doing exceptionally well right now, and a lot of the other new decks as well. We see Bandle City also in Lulu Poppy deck that you guys might have seen a couple of days ago, as well as Zoe, Nami, and Scion Discard. Super powerful new decks. So overall, the meta is extremely different from what it used to be before the expansion. Since this is a good old-fashioned deck guide, I'm going to be taking you guys through the deck, how to play it, how to mulligan, how to think about your plays. It's actually not as hard of a deck to play as it might seem. It's actually quite a bit easier than the Lulu Poppy deck that I was playing before. Let me make one real quick change for you guys first, because I'll be putting this back in for myself, but the standard version should be running 2 Protoporos and 0 Scorched Earth. And we'll talk about like putting the Scorched Earth back in or why you might do that. Basically, the idea behind this Bandle Tree deck is pretty simple. This is kind of like the more control-y direction that I had in mind when I first talked about Bandle Tree. Even before this card was printed, I was talking about building kind of like a more semi-control version of the list, and this is definitely stronger than a lot of other versions. Early on, like I built a Bilgewater version that was okay. That's kind of like the standard way to build it with like, you know, Mirai, Warden, and Double Trouble in some cases, but overall the Noxus version is very much outperforming it at this point, mostly because of the ability to run control tools, Ravenous Flock, and how Spider is really nice for the deck. The Spider Link token that it summons is a Shadow Isles card, so you're completing both Noxus and Shadow Isles in the same card, effectively a replacement to Mirai Warden, if not better. So the deck is all about stalling and making sure that you're blocking and stopping the opponent's game plan with your semi-control tools like Pokey Stick, like Group Shot, and like Ravenous Flock, and setting up to your Bandle Tree. Now, of course, Bandle Tree, as the round start, if you've at any point summoned units from 10 regions from any source, you win the game immediately. It's a super powerful ability, and for the most part, it's largely uncounterable without running a specific landmark destruction kind of card, which there really aren't that many in the game. Another really nice thing about this deck is it's relatively cheap, because you only need 4 total champions. You only need 2 Fizzes and 2 Poppies, and even if you don't have Poppies, you actually have some pretty good replacement options. You can run the multi-region card instead, and it'll actually work just fine. This little guy, Pompous Cavalier, can be ran instead of Poppy if you don't own her. So pretty simple game plan. Count up all the regions, make sure you're stalling your opponent out by just having efficient chump blockers, and it's actually a lot easier of a deck to play than it might seem. You'll have to, know a lot of the random cards that you'll deal with, but a lot of matchups actually get single-handedly carried by this bad boy 3 of Minimorph. A hard auto include for the 3 of. You cannot stoop below that. Minimorph is absolutely ridiculous and will basically auto win a lot of your otherwise potentially questionable matchups. Cards like Scion fold to Minimorph. Cards like Pike that can sometimes net out. Nope, you just Minimorph it. It's no problem anymore. Lee Sin, Minimorph, anything that's trying to end the game. Even like some of Darkness's champions, like Vigar, Senna, you just Minimorph them away and all your problems are gone. It's that easy. If you're against, like an Anivia deck, then, you can just Minimorph the Anivia. If you're against like a Fiora deck, God forbid, definitely Minimorph Fiora. Basically just like against like all index like that, you can actually keep Minimorph in your opening hand, but pretty much this card will just hard counter a lot of the otherwise potentially awkward decks in the game. Even using Minimorph against like a Nami, if you're playing against an experienced Zoe Nami player and they have Nami flipped on turn 4, which they pretty much always should, you can just Minimorph the Nami, and it's actually not even that bad, even though you're paying 6 mana for it. So normally this is the part in the video where I would talk about the matchups and like what your favored matchups are and your unfavored matchups are for this deck. Unfortunately, you know, I mean, the patch is so new, it's really hard to say for sure with confidence. Definitely some of the only decks that can potentially match this one are Nami Zoe and Scion style decks. But overall, Minimorph is such a hard counter to Scion decks that this particular version, using the 3 Minimorphs and like the Noxus tools, ends up favored there as well. It's a very, very powerful deck, and I mean, I'll update the pinned comment with updated matchup tables as soon as we actually have data to substantiate anything. But what I can talk about is this specific build and why some of these deck building decisions have been made. So for the most part, this deck is pretty straightforward. We're running most things that have the ability to summon and power Bandle Tree. We're running Bomber Twins for Shurima. Bandle Commando gives you some Ionia tools. Then of course there is Fizz for Bilgewater, Protoporo for Freljord, House Spider, as I mentioned, has Noxus and Shadow Owls. Loping Telescope has Targon, Aloof Travelers for PNZ, and Poppy for Demacia. So you've got really good representation here. And a couple of the decision points are, for example, you could run Teemo instead of Aloof Travelers. Aloof is better in general because of the mirror, but in a meta where you really need elusive blockers, Teemo is definitely fine to run in its place. Some people also have messed around with stuff like Lulu instead of Bandle Commando, because Lulu doesn't need to get a Nexus Strike in order to generate the Owlcat, although Commando is going to be better in general, mostly just because even if they're removing Commando, then that just means they're slowing down their own game plan, and you're winning those games anyway. I've also seen people mess around with Ziggs instead of Bomber Twins. That doesn't really make too much sense here though, because you don't really want to pay extra mana for health in this case. And even though Bomber Twins usually generates a completely useless landmark, even having like a 15% chance of generating a landmark that's playable is something that matters. For the most part, the deck build is actually pretty straightforward. There's only a couple of different ways to build, you know, an efficient Bandle Tree deck, as long as we're not running cards like, I think like some people are running Allegiance versions. I was trying Allegiance for a bit, like really early on, but even in Bilgewater versions, I don't think Gruff Grenadier really makes sense. Even going for like a pseudo pressured game plan, the card feels a little bit inefficient overall, and you really just want to slow down your game plan with some control tools, and you're gonna want a second region for that, something like Ravenous Flock. So yeah, that's pretty much the deck in a nutshell. Let's get into some games here, but first I'm gonna make a personal change, one that I wouldn't recommend for necessarily all of you guys. The list that I currently have up in the pinned comment is not running this card, but on ladder at the rank I'm playing, I'm currently using -1 Protopora for +1 Scorched Earth, just because of mirrors. People also running Bandle Tree. Being able to destroy the landmark is really valuable, and of course it's extra removal that we can enable with Pokey Stick and Group Shot, so it's a solid card in general. So at this point I'm gonna play 2 ladder games with this deck, and you know, see where I climb to. Like I said, I currently start the video at like rank 29. And let's see where it goes. I'll talk over my plays, of course, as I'm going, so you guys can get an idea of how to play the list. All right, so we're gonna be against Poppy Lulu. God damn. Cancer fucking deck us. All right, so we're against Poppy Lulu, and we're in this case gonna have to do something a little bit irregular and just make sure we're prioritizing keeping trump blockers. We're gonna want spells to be able to interact with the deck. So in this case, I think kicking away Protoporo and probably House Spider makes sense, and an elusive blocker is actually gonna be useful here. I actually will keep Flock and go deeper for some spell interaction. We're gonna have a lot of early trump blockers, so we don't need to keep Protoporo or House Spider. For the most part, I think a mistake a lot of people are gonna make with this deck is in the mulligan. People are gonna keep units that cost like 1 and 2 mana just because. And for the most part, most Runeterra decks don't want to do that. Like it's only a couple of specific kinds of aggro decks that want to just be keeping 1s and 2s no matter what. In this case, we definitely just want to make sure we're reaching for spells. It's an elusive deck, right, with you know, Poppy instead of Zed version, and what that means is it's very important that we have spell interaction as ways of dealing with them, and stuff like House Spider and the Protoporo aren't really going to do as much here. In this case, we can see what he does. I think actually playing the Telescope is pretty safe, just because it doesn't really give you enough actions to affect what the opponent does. This is really interesting though. We have a chance for Ruination, And of course, there would never really be anything to play around it. I'm just going to grab that Ruination there, honestly. This is actually probably an unfavored matchup if he's playing it well. And Ruination is a card that he literally can't play around. So, yeah, I mean, we take this. I'll take an attack here and force the duo to trade. Or he can let me draw the Owlcat if he wants. Hey, even better. And in this case, the Owlcat doesn't really need to block. So let's go ahead and bank for spell mana. Something that this deck will sometimes do, by the way, is see if you can get an opportunity to draw the Bandle City Mayor, because of course Bandle City Mayor will discount the Owlcat. So sometimes you can, like, if you don't need to play the unit, then don't play the unit, right? Just give it a little bit. Buster Shotting the Poppy feels really good here. Now usually you want Buster Shot to be a 2-mana card, but when you don't have the ability to get it to 2 mana fast enough, it's still very, very fine to just play it as a 4-mana card like this, right? Like, you're still shutting down really big offensive turns single-handedly. All right, I don't think we need to sacrifice the Commando, but we can save a little bit of health and use our otherwise kind of useless land blocker here. And I could play the Owlcat, but let's give myself a top deck to see if we draw the Bandle City Mayor, right? Because then we get a free discount, and that's just value. At this point, if he develops into turn 6, like another Poppy or something, that would be a really good Ruination. So I do potentially want to be making sure I'm banking enough max mana to do that. Owlcat would be a really nice blocker to that. Let's go ahead and open attack with the what is this guy called? Sorry, the Bandle Commando, and see exactly where our opponent plays, because we want him to play first, right? The Owlcats will actually be really nice. Actually, wait, they can't absorb Ruination, right? Because Spell Shield only protects from opponent effects. So yeah, they'll die to my own Ruination, but that's fine. And this is interesting. So the thing that could be a little bit scary here is potentially the opponent open attacking. In this case, we have enough of a block that I think we're fine with that. Let's play the other Owlcat first, though, just in case. If the opponent open attacks, we're actually not unhappy at this point. And we can actually greed the Phlox a little bit, because after Ruination, we're probably going to need to start resetting and killing the board again anyway. So at this point, I mean, we still have a pretty good block down. I think we can still pass again. Just do like a sad Poro emote first. Why not? I mean, he has no answer to Ruination. So I'll greed another pass here. In this case, I mean, he can't think I'm on anything at all. So I think I'll just lock it in now. No real reason to wait here. I mean, it's a Ruination after all. This is actually a completely bizarre game. I mean, I have to emote that. It's a Ruination game. Yeah, this is obviously a completely bizarre game. Not only did we get the Ruination, but we have a really bizarre hand too. We mulliganed hard for spells, and I'm actually pretty happy about having 3 Phlox here, as weird as that might seem. Because we've got Group Shot to enable, and against his deck, we really just want to control the board as much as possible, right? So let's pass. We want to be a somewhat controlling deck. Wow, he burned his mana. That's even better for us. We're not really in a hurry to play our stuff. As long as he's wasting more mana than us, we're happy. So he must have a pretty bad hand to take that kind of pass. We can, in this case, I don't think playing the Bandle Tree is really going to tap us under anything too risky. This is really bizarre because normally you play the Bandle Tree, you know, a little bit earlier here. I think it's just safe to play the Poppy. I want to make sure that we're not playing into anything too crazy on our defensive turns. But here we just have like the full spell hand. Normally this deck has a lot of units to be like blocking down with in these positions.
Thank me later.
Yeah. Okay, and I mean, his attack here is pretty bad. We can let him develop a little bit more.
You're covered.
All right, we can start poking things down. I think just using like 1 Buster Shot on this guy is fine. We've got 2 and the Phlox in as well. Yeah, he must be on a pretty spell-heavy hand that's just not going to be super valuable here. And of course, the Phlox will just take that down. We have 3 Phlox, so we're pretty happy just for him giving us an opportunity to even use them. I actually don't even need to really Group Shot this Mentor, because we do want to make sure we have enablers for the flock. I think we'll have enough between Buster Shot though. Let's just keep our health high and keep his board low at this point. And in this match, basically we just ended up being super control. So yeah, he goes for a sharp side there. That's fine. We can kill it with flock afterwards if we want, and he's just out of resources. His hand has to be on like a brick card like Rally here. It's sort of funny because we have so many flocks, it's actually worth just flocking for this Inspiring Mentor. It's normally just a 3-1, but it's only going to be damaged this turn because the sharp sight buff is temporary, so I will just flock to kill it since he's basically running out of resources and we still have the last flock and the mini morph anyway. Again, this is actually a terrible example game. I mean, I don't want to like cherry pick my games for these deck guide videos. But this is a highly irregular game for how this deck wants to play out. All right, so we can just start with a nice simple Bandle City Mayor and see what we get. Actually, you know what? Yeah, just because there's a chance he could do some wacky thing that makes us need to mini morph. So you can obviously see your tree progress here, and we still need a Freljord. In this case, though, we're not really winning off of tree. We're just trying to run him out of resources. So let's actually go for the Loping Telescope, right? He's aggro here, and the thing about Bandle Tree is, as powerful of a card as it is, you don't have to win off of the tree win condition every single time, right? Like, in this case, I'm super happy to just swarm the board and outvalue him, and make sure my Telescope is pulling me something here that, you know, will either accelerate my game plan. In this case, probably just... Actually, I'll go for the Shark Trainer because we have so much mana, we're getting to turn 10, and I might as well just, like, you know, it's also a Bilgewater card for the tree. And, I mean, I can just swing into an attack here. Completely free attack, no reason not to. Alright. That's the nice thing about Bandle City Mayor and Loping Telescope. Not only are they just absolutely crazy cards that will just provide insane amounts of value, but they also just have the ability to sometimes randomly win the game on their own. It's okay. Wanna come up? Wanna come up? Sorry, my dog got a little excited.
Show you how it's done.
All right. At this point, you know, I mean, we're not really taking too much from anything. I could, you know, if I want to do a weird mini morph as well. I think at this point his win condition is pretty non-existent. So I will just do a mini morph block just to make sure we're not losing to anything super weird. His hand is going to be a Rally plus, you know, a spell. And yeah, we win in this case without really having to worry about Bandle Tree, right? That's why we want to make sure we're mulliganing properly for each matchup. I think the most difficult thing about this deck is going to be the mulligan. You'll have to understand what the opponent's deck is trying to do. Against aggressive decks that blockers are useful against, we would absolutely have kept that Poro, the Proto Poro, as well as the House Spider in the opening hand. But because he was an elusive deck and it wasn't running Zed either, that means that like these chump blockers that can't block elusive units aren't really going to be valuable. So we mulliganed for spells instead, keeping Flock and making sure we had enablers for Flock. Also, in that matchup, you also wouldn't keep Bandle Tree in your opening hand either. Whereas there are some matchups like super control-y matchups where you would hard mulligan for Bandle Tree. And the last thing is that if you're in a matchup where mini morph hard counters like Scion, I would keep a mini morph in my opening hand against pretty much any deck where mini morph will hard counter their win condition, like Scion. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and get into another game here. See if we can take another one. I've climbed a pretty ridiculous amount today with this deck. I might climb a bit more tomorrow with it. See if I can get like top 10 at least. Because I mean, I've been kind of like messing around with too many other decks, and yeah, no, I mean my rank is still not that high right now. All right, so here's that Scion matchup we were talking about. So in a matchup like this, well, we want to make sure that we are not taking too much damage early while accelerating to our eventual game plan. Aloof Travelers can be kind of awkward in this matchup because if you're discarding their 8 mana Lost Soul, then that's a little awkward. If you're discarding their Scion, that's all right, but that can make you lose to like an early lose condition. Because we have 3 mini-morphs, mostly we're losing to their early game Swarm more than anything else. So I'll make sure I'm kind of putting him on a clock by keeping just 1 Telescope and the 1-drop Fizz in this case. I'm pretty happy about this. All right, super fine hand. This is a matchup where Bandle Tree is pretty nice and will often be how you close out games, but it's not 100% necessary either. We can often just win off of getting really good value out of our unit generation, like Telescope and Bandle City Mayor and even Bandle Commando, and then eventually just, you know, mini-morphing the Scion and ending the game like normal anyway. Oh, this is also good for us. Using Reborn Grenadier on offense is usually not how that deck wants to play. Oh, and he's attacking with the Grave Physician too. That's interesting. Well, my Fizz will be happy to just block that here. You know, Fizz, normally decks that run Fizz run him as like a more important piece, but in this case I'll happily just block, especially because it unclogs the other Fizz from my hand. So he's not really playing any elusive that wants to be blocking Bandle Commando. I'm not really getting an attack with anything else, so I'll just open attack with the Commander here. Could force out like a Mystic or something. He thought about it for a second. There's the Draven. So here's pretty straightforward. We can go ahead and see what we're pulling off of Telescope. Second Aloof is not bad. Moonglow is usually not really worth going for here. And of course, Starbone wouldn't really work. It's kind of a joke card we got. So I'll take the second Aloof. It's a PNZ card. We already have one if we draw a tree later, but it's still fine. And in this case, I won't play Owlcat, right? This is one of those cases where let's just send to spell mana. If we draw a Mayor in the next couple of turns, then we're saving a mana by doing this, and that's a really big deal. And also, you know, we're just like keeping ourselves more flexible because, you know, if I draw a Pokey Stick and I want to play a unit, then I've got spell mana that I'm saving for Flock. If we don't need the blocker, we don't need to play the unit. And that's a really, really important mentality with not just this deck, but honestly kind of most decks in general. So Aloof Travelers is a fine play here. He's going to drag something small that the Twin Blade Revenant can survive against. And I'm going to want to block the Draven with also something small and very expendable, which will probably just be like another Telescope. So the play here would normally be a Telescope, but I actually really do want to start accelerating my plays and curving into something a little bit more threatening. And if I'm playing a Telescope here, it curves with like a Fizz and an Owlcat. You know what? That's actually good enough. Let's play the other Telescope just so we don't take too much damage and have a blocker. In this case, the Messenger will be a pretty easy pick. I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting closer to my Minimorphs and my Bandle Trees for this matchup.
Let's boogie.
Goes for that one. And I'll keep my health a little bit high here. Bandle has so many disposable units. Normally, we don't want to block quick attack units because you're just, you know, your health is fine and you can let yourself go lower. But Bandle has so many disposable units that it's just good to save your health early in a lot of cases like this. Yeah, let's start by playing the Spellcat. Spellcat? Sorry, Owlcat. What did I say? In this case, we already have like Fizz plus Poppy if we want to go into next turn. So let's go ahead and just bank 2 mana instead. Because our Poppy's not really going wider. There's our Minimorph, which is really, really nice to have. And we'll see if Poppy's worth developing here. It can be a little bit baity. Like you don't always just want to, you know, YOLO and go for a Poppy right away. In this case, let's try to get a little bit closer to the tree win condition while setting up more defenders. I think I'll just start with a nice simple Aloof Travelers here.
You dropped something.
I dropped everything.
Okay, so that's a Scion discarded, which I'm happy about because often like multiple Scion hands demand multiple Minimorphs anyway. But you'll notice we don't really need tree to win the game, right? Like we're just generating here. We have another Telescope. We have the Messenger that's drawing us another card. Aloof is drawing us another card. And we've got Minimorph for the second Scion, even if the first Scion, even if he has a second one after we discarded his first one, right? Like we can kind of outgrind him for quite some time here before we really need to do anything else. In this case, I don't think Fizz is really providing too much value. No reason to keep our mana up though, so. Keeping a wide board for a turn 7 attack actually looks pretty good here. Set up for 2 turns from now. It's important to think about when you're using Poppy. I think a lot of people just want to slam Poppy when they have her. But in this case, because he had the Twin Blade Revenant on board, even before he buffed it, it was, you know, 4. Poppy just isn't surviving the first attack. And this isn't really a deck that needs board stats either, especially not in this matchup. Sometimes Poppy can provide value and actually sometimes start smacking the opponent Nexus down. But for the most part, this is a deck that's winning off of the Bandle Tree, right? So here, just go ahead and pass. See what it wants to do. I will probably be flocking this Revenant when it attacks. And we can just start continuing to block down, right? At this point, now that we have the Minimorph makes us a lot more safe against Scion. We didn't have it last time I let Draven through. At this point, I'll probably let Draven through instead of blocking him, if he were to do that attack. Because I'd favor a wide board with Poppy. Ooh, goes for the Grenadier. So he's trying to smork us down a little bit here. Let's set up the second telescope. Okay, so to note, we haven't played a Freljord card yet for Protoporo. We're just double checking since I don't have a tree in my hand and I don't want to embarrass myself by forgetting something. Because when you play so many games with this deck, they start to blur together. Yeah, we don't have any Freljord card for this either. We also don't have a card for Devourer, but we want something a little bit cheaper. And we're actually not really going to need to obliterate anything with Devourer. Because we still have a lot more draw in this hand, right? We still have Messenger and Loop Travelers. And those are going to be drawing us into more draw. If we were kind of like lower on resources, I would have picked something a little bit more expensive than Protopora, right? It's important to balance out your mana with your cards in hand, basically. Going out of 9 potentially. 9's gonna be a little bit low here. Let's yeah, we can block one more. I think that's fine in this case. Just make sure we're blocking down. I probably won't be playing for the Poppy win condition. I mean, if we're flocking this anyway, though. Yeah, we still have a wide enough Poppy, so let's go ahead and just keep our health high with this block, not do anything wacky. For the most part, the most important thing to realize is, like, we don't really need to keep a board. Normal... So most of the time with Poppy, you want a big board so that you have bigger buffs. This deck can use that sometimes, for sure, but it's much more of a side plan, right? Like, where we're able to play defensive, we have like Minimorph. The opponent doesn't really have game plans that get around it, and we've got draw in our hands. When we're able to play defensive positions like this, we just want to make sure we're getting value. I don't even really want him to discard the other Scion. I don't even mind discarding the Lost Soul for him. Yeah, I could just do that with the Aloof Travelers, because discarding the other Scion would be even worse for it. Let's do the normal draw first, though. Second Poppy. This is the turn 7 where we can set up for the wide Poppy attack that I was mentioning a couple turns ago. Another common misconception with Poppy is like just trying to use her super early, like on 4 or 5. And there's a lot of board states where it's actually just better to wait a little bit and make sure you're getting more maximum value. Also, Poppy's Verdict is another thing that can slow him down if he plays Scion into like his turn 8 attack. But I'll probably play Scion here if he has him. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and get the Poppy out.
Today's the day I find that hero.
If he plays Scion, it'll stop our attack since of course we have no Minimorph mana this turn. This is also a weird game. Yep, and we're gonna take a Get Excited. In this case, I'm actually, I think, perfectly fine with that. Could use a group shot before she dies, but there's kind of no reason to get the extra value out of group shot here. All right, we're just checking to see if he has another Scion. If he did, he probably would have used it right there. And there's kind of no reason to take any attacks here. Like, we just want to play defensive. And just wait until we're drawing into either the tree or more draw cycle cards. The one thing in both of these games that, well, we had a Mayor in the last game, but Mayor, especially having like multiple Mayors, is like really, really insanely powerful in this deck, especially if you can get them down early and chain out Loping Telescopes. We don't really have anything like that here, so we're kind of just dirtling out and just waiting for our draws to improve. But because we have Minimorph in our hands, he doesn't really have too much of an ability to put pressure on us. Oh, he's got another Get Excited if he's thinking about this. He's thinking about the aggro Get Excited on like my 3-2 maybe. Okay. Buster Shot's all right. It's a little bit late. I mean, I can kill the Draven here if he's not open attacking. This would have been really good to have pretty much any of the last 6 turns, because this Draven has kind of just been farming value while every turn it stays on the board. At this point, I'd like to draw more draw, but Buster Shot's right. It's at least taking down a unit. So he's searching for that second Scion here. And he hits, which is good for me because I've got the Buster Shot into Minimorph now. I really did want him to develop there into the Buster Shot, and I had the Minimorph to punish, you know, the Scion anyway, so this is just kind of perfect. And yeah, just making sure we're taking this this Draven down. So we can also probably start picking off little things with Group Shot. So it's the second Scion, although when it gets discarded, it's yes, shuffled back, so there's still 2 more Scions in the deck.
Who is left to kill?
The Loof Travelers will actually be a really nice blocker into this 3-3 mini minity that this guy was just kind of has on his board for some reason. That's weird. It's just,
Just
okay.
kill me.
This is actually maybe the best group shot we're getting, just basically protecting our 3-2. We could also like knock down his Revenants as well. 3-2 is actually a somewhat valuable stat line. I think this is totally fine though. I don't think there's really anything better we're getting out of this because group shot. I actually might not have enough units to group shot the Twin Blade Revenant because it won't be 2 damage anymore. That's kind of funny. Yeah, let's go ahead and just group shot that one. That's a little bit better. Keep our 3-2 alive. Group shot has outlived its usefulness here. If we had, you know, a Ravenous block or something to enable it, or if this was a matchup where there was something at 1 or 2 health that we wanted to kill at this stage in the game, it definitely could have been useful. All right, so yeah, we're just back to top decks. He's got 2 top decks coming in here with Loof Travelers. Hopefully we'll get our Bandle Tree pretty soon. I'm not really looking for a tree even. Like, I'd be happy just having a Mayor or another Telescope or Pokey Stick kind of stuff at this point is also great just because it just draw cycles. This deck has so much draw and manifest that it's pretty hard to run out of resources. Although we have a rare hand that seems to be pretty much out of gas. Yeah, why not? I'm gonna be honest, that's kind of a weird play. Ooh, Scorched Earth. I mean, it's like somewhat protected against the Loof.
I just know the hero's around here somewhere.
Give her its chance.
Alrighty, another Scion. It's pretty spooky.
Look, a thing.
That's
Yeah,
not ours.
we do have to aloof now, which obviously gives him the free Revenant, but he doesn't really want to develop into next turn anyway. This is definitely pretty interesting. I mean, my Poppy has an option to take an attack here. I mean, what we can try to do is, you know, threaten the Scion here and then try to kill it with like Group Shot and Scorched Earth. If we can just like take down the Scion, we're buying ourselves plenty of turns here.
Really?
And the Poppy giving this board buff is also really nice because these stats are just gonna do really nice installing out the Twin Blade Revenant for multiple turns. But at this point, we're gonna have to get through the Scion eventually anyway, so we might as well take an attack like this. It's more about the board stats and less about the Nexus damage. So the Scion will get in 1 attack next turn, and we can kill the Scion returned with Group Shot Scorched Earth. Or we can force out the Scion returned right now and basically just tank it for 10. Tanking it for 10 is going to be a little bit awkward just because he has these elusive Daring Poros. I might have to use one of my fat blockers on that.
Oh,
Alright, interesting. So the better play is to just kind of like wait to see how our draw goes, especially because, you know, we could get another mini morph or something anyway. Ooh, more aloof. I don't even mind at this point. I mean, I just want anything that's gonna draw cycle. It's another weird hand, actually. Okay, seems good.
You dropped something.
I dropped
There it is. All right, that took a little while in this case. Normally, again, we don't even really need to see Bandle Tree. It could have been, you know, Mayor or something that would have generated value, but Tree is kind of like the easy one in this case. So we're gonna go ahead and kill the Scion and get the Scion returned dead here as well, which is pretty nice. Don't have to play Tree yet. Because he has a board of elusives, it's actually probably better to kill the Scion before it attacks so that the rally gets wasted, which is pretty interesting. And we have no other value out of Scorched Earth here. So I can Scorched Earth it right now. It'll basically just waste the rally immediately because he still has the attack token. Whereas if I do it after he is able to start the combat, then he'll get another elusive attack. At this point, this is probably the fine play. We're only taking a little bit of elusive damage here. And we're always going to block maximum by doing this and even group shotting one of the Poros because we're just trying to survive one more attack after this, right? Bandle is 8 out of 10. which means, you know, we're gonna play the 9th card on this turn, and we're gonna play the 10th card on his turn, but that does involve surviving one more of his attacks, which does get a little dicey. Actually, we just drew the house spider. We just win. Yeah, this was a weird game. We definitely kind of low rolled this one. Double get excited. Well, if he's got double get excited, he could actually win. Nope. Yeah, we definitely low rolled this game a bit. We had really awkward draws, but because we had a single mini morph, and because, you know, we have a ton of draw generation, we were able to just make sure, like, he can't win the game either until our draws improved. Super easy. There's actually not even much to say about this. It's just like, play pretty optimally. It's a very straightforward deck. It's a lot more straightforward than it looks. You don't really have to be thinking too much about like crazy combos. Just make sure that you are playing efficiently to your resources, seeing yourself as the defender in these matchups, not taking some like wild crazy attacks with Poppy if you don't need to, and just playing passive, playing slow, and letting your deck just carry you. Like I said, this deck is pretty absolutely insane. Let's go ahead and check. We just won both of our games, and now I'm number 19 on the leaderboards. That's pretty cool. So yeah, maybe tomorrow on stream we'll climb back up, go for the rank 1 push again, because we didn't get rank 1 today yet. But yeah, that's the Bandle Tree deck in a nutshell. This is, I think, the most refined Bandle Tree deck that you will find anywhere right now. Again, you can run the 2 Protopora version, 0 Scorched Earth. It's kind of a meta call at that point, but I'd recommend the deck for anyone looking to get some pretty free wins, because this deck is unfair. All right, guys, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next video.